All right, I'm going to show off one solution that you can, or one approach that you can use in order to complete this Python Magic 8-Ball project. Now I'm going to break it up into a couple different sections. The first one that we're about to go over here is going to deal with getting the initial code set up. Things like importing modules, setting up variables, and getting the loop ready. Then we'll break down receiving the responses from the user and generating the random response back to the user. So take a look. I'm going to do the initial setup for the code. So the first step, I'm going to import two modules. So I'm going to bring in both the sys module and the random module. Now, if you went through the exercise and started it out there and even completed it, hopefully you got an opportunity to go through and research both the sys and the random module. The sys module we're going to use eventually here to be able to exit the application. If a user doesn't input any value, they don't ask a question, they just hit their enter key, we want to exit the program. The random module is what we're going to use to randomize the responses that we give back to the users based on a list of values, those proper Magic 8-Ball responses. So we got the two modules there. Remember the dir keyword that you could utilize and the help method. All right, so there's the two modules. The next step, I'm going to set up a couple of variables. The first one I'm going to set up here is going to be the responses. And I'm just going to make a simple list for each of these responses. So there's 8 of them. I got to remember each of them. Thankfully, I've got them written down here. So let's see, it is certain. That is one of them. You may rely on it. You may rely on it. And so on. We want to be able to get all 8 of them in here. As I see it, yes. Outlook, good. Most likely. And if you want to make up some of your own, feel free to do that as well. These are just the traditional responses that the Magic 8-Ball gives, and I need to wrap that in quotes. Decidedly so. Oh, let's see, without a doubt. And yes, definitely. I mean, you can get really fun with it and get back whatever responses you'd like there. But we should have at least 8 of them in there. It's the Magic 8-Ball, right? All right, so there's my initial responses there. Now, there is another variable that I'm going to create here, but this deals with the loop. So I'm going to create it here in just a moment. For the loop, we want this to continually run. Just run, right? The users type in a question, they hit their enter key, it should return the response, and then right away after they return the response, it should go right back in and say, okay, well, enter a question, right? Just continue the cycle of prompting the user for the next question, We want to quit the loop. We want to stop this cycle if the user doesn't put any question in and they just hit their enter key. But initially, I just want it to run. So here, I'm going to create a for loop, or actually, I'm going to do a while loop, I'm going to do a while loop where it'll just loop while questions. As long as there's questions, it should just keep doing it. But what is questions? Well, questions is the idea. It's a little more abstract. It's the idea of users are going to continually enter questions into our system. So questions is actually going to be a variable. I'll create it here, and I'm going to initialize it to true. It's going to be true. And you know what? That's actually never going to change. It's just going to loop, because questions will always be true. So while questions, and I don't have to say is equal true. Don't have to do that. All I have to say is just while questions, and it'll default to being true. So that's our initial setup right there. We've got two modules. We haven't taken advantage of them just yet, but we've imported them in. And we've got two variables, one being the proper responses, all 8 of them, and I'm just using a list. You may have gone about this a little bit differently or programmed it different. Maybe you use, instead of a list, you use just a big old if statement, whatever it is. And then I've got one for my loop. While questions, as long as that is true, and it's always going to be true, it'll just keep going. But in the next video, we'll talk about generating the random responses, picking from that list randomly, and what's going to exit the application. We'll take a look at both of those. But that's my initial setup. Okay. If you haven't done this yet, or you want to try it out with me, maybe you did it a different way, jump in there, start banging out the code there. Make sure you understand. If you got questions about it, jump into the Q&A section of the course and ask your questions. So until then, go ahead and bang away your code, and then the next video here, the next lecture, we'll talk about the actual meat and potatoes of the loop itself.